Hello, everybody, and thank you for inviting me here to give this TED talk. So, I'm going to tell you a little bit about myself and the work that I have done in sheep and goat genetic improvement. So, I'll start my story with my parents. My mother, Nimbkar, who is a writer in Marathi and English, and my father, Bihari Nimbkar. Sadly, he is no more, but he was an eminent agricultural innovator and also the pioneer of the seed industry during the Green Revolution in India. And he truly shaped my career. And we are three sisters. So I had a charmed childhood in the small town of Phaltan, which is about 110 kilometers southeast of Pune. We had a large group of friends and we used to play in the garden around our house and inside the house as well. I went to a Marathi medium school called Mudoji High School, which was about 5 minutes walk from our house. And I learned English much later. I had English in school, but I didn't talk it very much. And I remember that my parents used to talk in English when they didn't want us to understand what they were saying. When I was about 8 years old, Maxine Burnson came to Phaltan. She is an American linguist and educationist, and later in life, she decided to make India her country and took Indian citizenship. I learned English from her also, and she became one of my best friends in later life, a truly amazing person. So these are some of my friends in school. So I did my SSC, and I came third in the state of Maharashtra, which was quite unusual in those days because a small town girl or boy had not reached that stage yet. But my mother didn't let me go to any of the felicitation functions because she said that there was not much difference in the intellect of somebody in the first in the merit list or 10th or 50th or 100th because of the system of marking. And that was a good lesson in humility for me. Because I got good marks, everybody thought that I would choose the science stream. And because everybody thought that, I didn't. So I went to commerce and started studying accountancy at the Neswadia College of Commerce. But then by the third or the fourth year, I was so fed up with accountancy that after I did my BCom degree, I didn't know what to do. So I went back home to Phaltan and I started managing our family farm. My father was my advisor, but this man, Namdev, was my guru in farming. He had never gone to school, but it was amazing how much he knew. I grew jawar and bajra and chickpea and many other crops, but not sugarcane. And while farming, I also nurtured my passion for trekking and hill walking. So during one of these treks with the Bombay Natural History Society, I met my life partner, Gavin Bromilo. He is Australian. We fell in love. But I told him that I would never migrate to Australia, and he told me that he would never migrate to India. And we said to each other, let's see how it goes. And it's still going. So I was doing my farming. Sometimes it was very good, but then when the rain suddenly came and the farm got flooded, that's what it looked like. But I started to feel the need for an intellectual pursuit. And just around that time, my father had started the animal husbandry division of our institute, and he had started to do research and development work in sheep and goats. The reason why we chose sheep and goats is that they are the backbone of the rural livelihoods in our country, and the most underprivileged people in our rural society maintain sheep and goats. And he found out that not much research had been done to improve the productivity of the sheep and goats. So we invited Dr. Gerald Wiener, an animal geneticist from Scotland, through the British Council to give us advice on how to develop sheep and goats for better productivity, how to carry out genetic improvement. And that led to my going to the Institute of Animal Genetics at the University of Edinburgh in Scotland to do a master's degree in animal breeding. It was a terribly tough course, but I did it. I got the degree with a distinction. And I could have gone on to do a PhD, but I came back because I wanted to learn about the livestock sector in India. So I had learned in my course that genetic improvement of livestock was very, very important. But what I found that India was relying on genetics that was imported from abroad, like these Holstein Friesian cows. And we can do that, but it means that our livestock keepers have to keep livestock which have been developed according to the breeding objectives of the Western people, the Western livestock keepers and the Western countries. While our own breeds, like this one, have the characteristics of hardiness and adaptation to the circumstances, which then we lose out on. So I decided that I needed to do something about this. At that time, I had no clue how I would go about it, but that's what I'm going to tell you about. So it all started with my father corresponding with this lady, Dr. Helen Newton Turner, who was a well-known Australian sheep geneticist. And he asked her advice about introducing the characteristic of twinning in sheep. Now, most people think of wool when they think of sheep. But most of the sheep in India are reared really for meat rather than wool. Wool is a sort of a very low income earner from sheep. The most of the income in sheep rearing comes from the sale of lambs. So Helen Newton Turner told us about this wonderful Indian breed of sheep called the Gaul. These are Gaul sheep. And she told us, she called them Bengal sheep, by the way, because she didn't know the real word for them. She told us that these sheep had been taken to Australia in 1792 and 1793. And they had the characteristic of prolificacy, or giving multiple lambs. And because of them, the numbers of sheep in Australia had increased from about 6,000 in 1800 to 61 million in 1891. And she told us that we could use these sheep to introduce twinning into our sheep because these sheep carried a single gene for prolificacy. So what had happened in Australia, that these sheep had gone in the latter part of the 18th century to Australia, and for about 40 to 50 generations they had mixed with the sheep that had already been brought from other countries. And in the 1940s it was discovered that because of them, the merino sheep in Australia had started having twins and triplets. And later on, the Australians went on to develop the Barula merino breed of sheep, which became famous later in the world, and it also was exported to most countries in the world. And it was amazing that these Garol sheep carried exactly the same gene as these Barula sheep. And later on, we introduced this gene into our local breed. So we found out where these Garol sheep lived, and they lived in the Sundarban, which is a swampy area, and where you would normally not expect sheep to live. So they had the extremely important characteristic of worm resistance also. So we brought them to Phaltan. And we embarked on the breeding program to introduce the twinning into our sheep. We approached the Australian Centre for International Agricultural Research, or SCR for short, for funding. But SCR is a government agency, and they approved our proposal, but they said that someone from the government of India would have to sign the MOU. And we had to wait for about 4 years to find that agency who would sign the MOU. But finally, we did. And we collaborated with the University of New England in this project, and therefore we learned a lot with the interaction, due to the interaction with the professors of this university. Later on, of course, I did my PhD as well at the University of New England in Australia. So we developed the Nari Suvarna breed of sheep, which had the adaptability and the good milk yielding capacity of the local sheep, but it had twinning or triplet giving characteristics of the Garol breed. Garol were tiny sheep. Their adult weight was only 12 to 15 kilos. And that's what I have shown in this slide, that we were able to develop the Nari Suvarna, which had an adult weight closer to that of the local sheep. And there is a DNA test which we now carry out in our laboratory to find out which sheep is carrying how many copies of this gene. This breed became quite popular, especially in Karnataka state. And so far, we have disseminated 900 breeding rams and 1400 breeding ewes of this Nari Suvarna breed. These are some more pictures of the Nari Suvarna sheep, which have really become very popular, and they have earned about 50 to 60% more income to the sheep owners. And the local shepherds also took them up later on. And it was very gratifying to receive the CSIR award for Science and Technology for Rural Development in 2007, because 12 years before, the Indian government had told us that we did not have the competence to carry out this project. So in due course, the building of our institute was, and this work could not have been done by one person. So I'm showing you a photo of my whole team, including my colleague, Dr. Pradeep Ghalsasi. And this is a photograph where some of the trainees of one of our training programs were with us. And I'm also very happy that now I have got the opportunity to work in Bihar with very poor women goat keepers with a project called Project Mesha, carried out by the Aga Khan Foundation, where they are increasing the productivity of these goats and improving the income of these women. So we devise an index score for the male kids. We select the male kids, and then those selected kids are used for further breeding. We use a database provided by a company called Abacus Bio in New Zealand to enter the data of all these goats and then to select the breeding males. And now even the women who keep the goats understand the principles of genetic improvement. So it is really very gratifying to receive a message like this one that I received from Dr. Victor O'Lory, about last week. He is originally from Nigeria, but he has worked in the UK in academia and industry for sustainable and balanced animal breeding. And what he said in his message was that you encompass the of research and development, application of technological innovations, capacity building, and knowledge transfer. You have made an impact on livestock production using these. Thank you very much.